So this is Habakkuk 3:2. Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds. Lord, repeat them in our day, and in our time make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. So we know that the name is based on embrace. We're talking about 612 to 606, somewhere in that time frame. What has just happened to a major city in this time frame? We talked about, what was that? Nineveh was destroyed. The Syrians, I think, are still kind of hanging on a little bit to a little bit of power, but in the next few years, they're going to be totally taken out and overcome by another up-and-coming nation, the Babylonians. And so when we get into the next two minor prophets, we're going to be talking about post-exile from Babylon. So since we're going to have a little gap in years, about 80 years in that frame, Kyle is going to teach the class this Sunday, and he's kind of going to go over, I think, a couple of the major prophets. I think it's going to be Ezekiel and Daniel, and he's going to have a little bit on Ezra and Nehemiah as far to kind of tie in the pre-exile, which is where we're at, and we're going to go into the post. So there's that 80 years that things happened. It wasn't like nothing happened. A lot happened. So Kyle's going to teach the class Sunday, and I'm grateful for that. Habakkuk's style. This is from Jack Lewis, Minor Prophets. I like this. It says the book of Habakkuk, a book of excellent poetic form, is written in the style of a complaint and answer. I think we've established that. How many questions did Habakkuk have? Habakkuk. How many questions did he end up having? No. He had two. He had two questions. 3 chapters, but 2 questions. In contrast to the other prophets who addressed themselves to Israel in order to declare the will of God, this prophet addresses himself to God on behalf of Israel. He does not exercise himself concerning the sins of his people, which is unusual for the prophets. His is an effort to justify the ways of God to men. It's a book of consolation, which is comfort to a people upon whom the threatening shadow of a long exile was rapidly sinking. There's 3 divisions. The first division is the first question. How long could God allow the sinfulness of his people to go unchecked? God answers that he is raising up the who? Chaldeans or the Babylonians to punish the evil doers. And who are the evil doers in this case? Israel. Righteous living by faith. This is the first the first 4 verses. Chapter 2 shows the answer from God. So, of course, Habakkuk had the question, and here's the answer. He is waiting humbly to hear how God can use the Babylonians to judge. Chapter 2 is divided into 2 ideas. Habakkuk receives a vision of what will happen given those circumstances. There are some people who will be saved. Yes, we know there's a remnant. And others who will experience destruction. Verses 2 through 4 show us those who will be saved. In verse 2, and the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous, what? Shall live by faith. Living by faith in verse 4, the thrust of the first part of God's answer is that even in the midst of this judgment, there are going to be just and righteous people who will live. They will escape the judgment or not fight against the Babylonians and be preserved, perhaps physically, but ultimately spiritually. So, Habakkuk 2:4 is found in what New Testament book? I'm not sure if this was the last question I asked on Sunday or I didn't get to this, but I'm going to ask it again. Does anybody know without the choices?
Is it part of the just shall live by his faith?
Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. That would help if you knew what the verse said. Yeah, the just shall live by faith. Where else is that found? Okay, Romans 1:17. Oh, if I don't give you the choices, you might know all the answers.
Hebrews 10:38.
Yep.
Is it John 3:36?
I don't know. Is it John 3:36?
Well, that's what it says in my...
Okay, well, I have Galatians 3:11. And I have all of the above. All of the above? All of the above?
Yeah.
It is all of the above. So here they are. In Romans 1:17 it says, "For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith." Hebrews 10:38. "Now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall not have no pleasure in him." In Galatians 3:11, "Now it is evident that no one is justified before God by the law, for the righteous shall live by faith." Second division. Habakkuk's second question. How can God possibly use what? An evil nation to punish a people who are less wicked? Questions there. God answered in 2:2 that the righteous will live by faith and that he will punish the Chaldeans eventually. So, this is the question to you guys. What is the hierarchy of evils outlined in the below verses? So I have two versions. I have the New International Version and then the New American Standard Version. They're a little different, but I need a hierarchy of evils in those verses. Hierarchy means it's starting here, and it's going to go here, and then here, and here, and here.
Like the most evil on top?
Well, I guess the evil that progresses through the verses. So start with the first evil.
Pride.
Pride. I agree.
It speaks about wine betraying the haughty or the arrogant man.
So you have wine, so maybe some intoxication there.
Greed.
Greed's definitely in there. Arrogance is definitely in there.
Gluttony.
Gluttony, because of the appetite.
Yeah, it's greed, but
Never at rest, is it like a busybody?
Busybody, never at rest. Yes. Yes, that's definitely one. Never at rest, or I think the other version has doesn't stay at home. Busybody could be that. And I think down at the bottom, he gathers the nations. That could be what? Kidnapping or...
at the very least, it's oppression. It's oppression.
Oppression.
Of the weak.
Yeah. So this is what I have. Pride leads to not thinking righteously, which leads to becoming intoxicated, which leads to not being satisfied, never at rest, which leads to greed, which leads to theft and murder, which leads to depression. So you have all of those. That's the hierarchy, the progression in these verses here. And who are we talking about with these particular verses? Are we talking about the Israelites, or are we talking about the Babylonians? Probably the Babylonians, right? Because we're talking about he gathers to himself all the nations, takes captive the people. Isn't that what the Babylonians are getting ready to do? Is that how you guys read that?
This little thing is the Babylonians' arrogance led to brutality that talks about.
And what does it mean? I have that. Oh, I do. What's Shiloh? Is that how you pronounce that? Shiloh? Shield? What does that pertain to? It says it right here. He enlarges his appetite like Shiloh.
The NIV translates grave, and it's kind of a personification of the grave.
Mm-hmm.
You might liken it to the idea of Hades, but it most appropriately it would just be translated as the grave. It's just where you put dead people.
Is the grave ever satisfied? So its appetite is all-consuming, never satisfied. Well, this is what I have here. Who wants to read this? Go, Karen.
And for greed, wide as Sheol. In verse 5, God declares that these people's greed is as wide as Sheol. Sheol is the grave and death. Does death ever decide enough people have died? No. It has a gluttonous appetite. These people who are judged place their faith not in God, but in wealth, possessions, wine, etc. Rather than using possessions to express love to others, we can sometimes love possessions and use people to gain them. This mindset is never satisfied. It is a description of the Babylonians. They were a brutal people because their faith was in stuff and not in the God who provides what we need.
Very good. So what does the term woe mean to you? Woe. Because if you're on a horse, you could yell, whoa. That's the same thing.
Beware, something's about to happen.
Be aware something's about to happen like that.
And woe's like a misery, right? Or like something bad happening.
It's almost like a curse. Almost like pronouncing a curse.
So you've heard the term woe with me. When you're in distress, you can have a woe is me type of mentality. But in this sense, we're talking about woe to a certain nation. FYI, in the Bible, woe is far more than an expression of sadness. It is a firm warning of grief and judgment. You know, Jesus talks about in Matthew 23 the 7 woes to the scribes and Pharisees. And many prophets writing, Amos, Micah, and Habakkuk, woe statements often follow a steady pattern. They expose wrongdoing, declare the seriousness of the sin, and then a warn of waiting judgment. Often the offense that provokes woe is injustice or idolatry, as seen in Micah 2:1. And this is what it says in Micah 2:1. Woe to those who plan iniquity, to those who plot evil on their beds. At morning's light they carry it out because it is in their power to do so. When we studied Micah, I think we went over this verse, and I remember, you know, if if you're sitting idle at home and you're not busying your mind with positive things, you might lay in your bed and think of evil things, evil plans, maybe pursuing a certain sin because you just have that opportunity. And then at morning's light, it says, in this case, at morning's light, they carry it out because they have what? The ability to do it. So I'm going to get y'all's help to read Habakkuk's 5 woes. Who wants to help me out on this? I know Mickey's right front and center. Okay. A lot of reading, Mickey. You ready?
Absolutely.
You need a glass of water.
Mentally prepared.
Okay.
Chapter 2, verse 6 through 8, the first woe is directed at those who exploit and oppress others for personal gain. God pronounces judgment on the greedy and unjust. Woe 1, the woe of the oppressor. Chapter 2, verse 9 through 11, the second woe speaks to the issue of hostility and bloodshed. The Babylonian Empire was infamous for its violence and cruelty in warfare. Woe 2 is the woe of violence. Chapter 2, verse 12 through 14, the third woe is a cry against men who build cities and slave labor, who hold life cheap and ignore the misery of those employed. Woe 3 is the woe of deceit. The fourth woe involves the corrupting of others. The specific sins mentioned are getting others drunk for the purpose of lust and sexual sins. Woe 4 is the woe against callousness. The fifth and final woe is a warning from God that the worship of man-made creations will not save those who depend on them and the silliness of trying. Woe 5, the woe of idolatry.
Thank you very much. So the hope in the woes. Though the 5 woes outline serious consequences for wickedness, they also serve a greater purpose. Habakkuk's wrestling with God's justice ultimately leads to a deeper understanding of faith during trials. The text not only shows God's looming judgment on the wicked, in this case Babylonia, but also reassures the faithful that righteousness will be rewarded. The woes remind believers of the importance of living justly, honoring, and putting God first, reinforcing that in the face of injustice, there's always hope in divine victory, which is very, very encouraging, especially for those who are getting ready to be captive and taken to Babylon, where a lot of people may, without God's, trust in God and without faith in God, they would feel hopeless, in a sense. So what benefit is a carved image when its maker has carved it? This is in verse 18 of chapter 2. It says, what benefit is a carved image when its maker has carved it, or a cast metal image, a teacher of falsehood? For its maker trusts in his own handiwork when he fashions speechless idols. Woe to him who says to a piece of wood, awake, to mute stone, arise. That is your teacher. So what benefit? What's this? What are these 2 verses trying to say?
There is no benefit in a carved idol of wood or stone.
Well, why carve it if there's no benefit?
Benefit to false worship.
So I know that when we were talking about idol worship with the Israelites, or idol worship when nations take over other nations and they adopt their idols, and I think I said something where they really don't believe in them, but then Kyle said, well, yeah, they do, or they wouldn't have, bothered. So, I mean, they have to believe in these, right? These carved pieces of wood or stone or even metal.
To some extent, they certainly put their hope in them. And maybe that's the benefit, is that they produce the illusion of hope. They don't actually provide hope, and that's the whole point of what he's saying. The Psalm 115 specifically calls out that they can do nothing. And the people who trust in them and the people who make them can do nothing. But there was the notion that maybe they would rescue me, or they would deliver me, or they would bless me.
I know we've mentioned that in some cases, Israelites would take on an idol thinking that, maybe this is going to help me grow a good crop, or I'm going to be able to have a child. And that they place their hope in this. This is kind of being, in a sense, sarcastic, right? That kind of question. That's what do they call that type of rhetorical question, right? That is your teacher? Like, are you serious? I mean, you make it. You make this idol. You made it, and then you're going to bow down to the thing you actually made? Does that make any sense? I mean, you have intelligence and to carve this, the talent, the skill. You have this thing, and then you're bowing down to it. Like it's going to do something for you.
It's kind of placebo hope, right?
Oh,
Things are out of your control. It just feels better for a minute. Put your hope in something.
I think too, it comes back to those evil desires, and when we talk about that, I always think of the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. Those core evil desires that we contend with, and when we begin to try to make a god, we're going to make that god in our own image. We're going to make that god desire what we want it to desire. And so it's going to be something beautiful in our eyes. People don't make their gods out of pitch and rags. They make out of gold, silver, diamonds, and precious things that they desire. And the worship that they offer it is for things that pleasures that they want to indulge in. Oh, our God wants us to indulge in wine to celebrate Him. Of course He does.
Because that's what they want.
Right, and our God is, we have this thing, we have this knowledge. When we toured some in Italy, it was kind of hilarious to see all these ancient cities. And they have these amazing cathedrals and these beautiful old churches, and a lot of the point of these little city-states of these churches was they wanted a relic. That was the thing back then. They wanted a relic. So we have, this dead apostle's body. Well, how did you get it? Oh, we stole it from those people. Because that makes us great. It's just that pride of some sort of made up achievement. That was long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, that was great. I was just thinking when we visited other countries that have these cathedrals, and you go to these cathedrals because they're just beautiful. I mean, you go in and there's, all the different gold, I guess figurines of Virgin Mary or other biblical characters, and you're just wowed at the grand room and all the different things they have. And yet people are actually kind of worshiping, in a sense, the building and all the stuff. Which, it goes back to that placebo effect. It makes you feel good for a little while, but
Not dramatically different.
Yeah.
And a lot of this didn't start out, though, as gods we believe in. You know, Solomon is responsible for a lot of the bringing back to the people. You know, God has rescued them out of Egypt. The first thing Solomon does is go marry Princess of Egypt and bring a lot of that God had rescued them out of back in. I don't think there's anything to really make us think Solomon thought those gods were real. Solomon just didn't see he didn't see it. It appears he didn't see it as much more than just a political alliance. It's just something you do in politics.
Yeah.
It's just a necessary evil in the world that I live in. But it leads to this, and I think idolatry can start out that way for us too. That we may see something and not think at all that it is a god, or not think that it is something for us to put our hope into, and then to a certain extent we get addicted to it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's when we kind of need to wake up and realize this is my teacher. And the idea of being the teacher is the student will wind up looking like the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
It's the student talks like the teacher, the student thinks like the teacher, the student teaches the way the teacher taught them, and it's all about mimicry. And that's also what the Bible tells us idolatry is doing. We will become consumed by our idols so much so that we become just like them, which in years you dumb.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Thank you for your comments. We do know there is a kind of a powerful story in the Bible that talks about false gods versus Yahweh, and we know we're talking about the contest between God and his prophet Elijah versus 450 of the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. And who wants to kind of relay that story in a little detail?
Well, you've got Elijah and these prophets meet at this. They agree to come together and meet here on the top of Mount Carmel to kind of show to the people once and for all who the real God is. And Elijah concedes to let Baal go, the Baal worshippers go first.
It's like taunting, right?
Yeah. So they do everything they can to try to wake their God up.
And what was he saying to taunt?
Essentially, he kind of insinuates maybe he's relieving himself in the restroom. But he allows them to try to the point where they begin doing some of the things that you would see in these, some of this idol worship. They begin cutting themselves, bloodletting. They're never able to persuade Baal to come to their defense. And so then Elijah gets the opportunity, and not only is he able to petition God and have his petition heard, but he does it in remarkable fashion. The sacrifice and the altar and everything soaked in water, and yet fire comes down and licks the water up, consumes the sacrifice.
Pretty powerful, if you were there. But it was written down, right? So that when Josiah found the book of the law, was it written in that book?
It wouldn't have been in the book of the law.
Okay, but
this would have happened pre-Josiah. So this, the book of Kings is probably not written in the day of Josiah, but the acts of the kings are being recorded, and it's very likely that Josiah has some version, probably not what we have, but has some form of record of these events.
So what might be an example of a carved image based on today? And I have quite a few. So that is one. Kyle lifted up his phone. Any more?
the love of money is always going to be.
Love of money. You know, we're not talking about an actual carved image, but we're talking about things that we kind of occupy our time, and a lot of our time. Yeah, is money bad? Is having a cell phone bad? A lot of the things I'm going to mention bad? No. Unless you take it to a point where that's your whole life. It's money or your cell phone.
Where you put your hope in it, right?
Whatever you put your hope in.
Government, you know, like where you're looking for. Put your hope.
Yeah, that's pretty prevalent today as far as government and us versus them, and
You're talking about placebo. I mean,
yeah,
countless people hopeless, and where they turn.
government.
I think beyond just the cell phone, like technology is just so fast now.
Yeah.
We have AI and a lot of people putting their hopes in that. And it does do some good things, but then I think about, well, when it's hacked or grid goes out or like we have no idea what to do with ourselves because our technology's down. So our hope and all that technology brings, second it goes out, we're lost.
It's funny, me and my son, we went on a hike. This is a long time ago, back when I think he was a junior or senior in high school. And, he had the iPhone. I don't think it was an iPhone then. It was just a cell phone, but you were still able to text and all that, right? Before the iPhone, were you still able to text? So I remember we were getting ready to go on the trail. And it was going to be a round trip. So basically, actually, no. I think my wife took us to where we started, and we were going to hike back to where we left my truck. So it was, it was a straight line kind of thing. Anyway, so I told him when we left the truck that he couldn't take a cell phone, and he was glad. So the whole trip, it was a two night, 3 day. No cell phone, not worrying about, text his girlfriend and he get a response within 10 seconds. And why didn't she text me back in those 10 seconds? What's going on? The mind games and, just other things I guess you do with your phone, checking, other emails or whatever. And so for 3 days, he was relieved not to have to worry about having to check that phone. But as soon as we got back to the truck, what was the first thing he grabbed? You're talking about AI. I've been hearing some stuff about AI, and AI is going to be a very good tool. I think me and Kyle's talked about it a little bit. But there's going to be a lot of scary stuff that is going to come down the road, and it's already happening where this young lady's marrying an AI bot or whatever. Is that what they're called? No, marrying this. Then I heard this last week that there's a company that's able to take a 3 to 5 minute segment of maybe a loved one. And once that loved one passes away, they're able to utilize this function to where the loved one can talk back to the family as if the loved one's still alive. As if the loved one's always going to be with you. The loved one's never going to pass away. And I don't know if anybody listens to Matt Walsh, but he said that when someone passes away, you need to have the 5 or 7 stages of grief, and that if you keep the loved one and they have the AI that sounds just like the loved one, and some of the mannerisms, some of the history of the loved one as far as knowing the family, that you don't get beyond the first stage, and that can be harmful. So I don't know. I don't know a lot about AI, but I know that there's going to be some things that we're not going to really appreciate. And I think it's like the iPhone. There's a lot of things that the iPhone is causing people to become so addictive that you can't even go to bed without it in their hand in some cases, to where when they wake up they have to look to see what's going on. It's just kind of scary. Anyway, this is some of the things I have. Now, many worship at the altar of self. So you have pride, vanity, greed, narcissism, selfishness, materialism, self-worship, one's own truth, sexual orientation, which wasn't a thing 20 years ago, self-indulgence, alcohol, drugs, gambling. These are all pretty much kind of self type of worshiping. An idol is anything that replaces the one true God. Then I have the following could also be idols, which I think some of you guys have mentioned some of these. Excessive TV watching, naturalism and science. I love both those, but they can also become idols. Entertainment, relationships, screen time, hobbies, careers, sports, goals. Does that make sense? Most of those, I would say, if it just said TV watching or viewing, I would say none of these in its own self is sinful. But it goes back to if this is what your whole life's about, your whole life is about sports and whatever I'm going to do to make it to whatever sport, college, or be it after college. If your hobbies tie you up into a time where that's all you're doing is you're doing your hobbies and you don't think about anything else. I am the Lord. This is Isaiah 42:8. I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other, nor my praise to carved idols. Yes, sir.
So the interesting thing about idols, and to your point you just made, God didn't have a problem with Israel carving things. He's going to command them to make a tabernacle that is primarily filled with carved images. But they're carved images that he asked them to do. But it just goes to show that somebody having a calf on their door wouldn't necessarily mean they had made a carved image. But the interesting thing in the giving of the law even is over a relatively short period of time, God's law changes specifically because of idolatry. So he gives them in chapter 20 of Exodus the command, do not make an idol for yourself. Very early on in the wilderness crossing, they are going to be near the border of Jordan when in Deuteronomy 4 he's going to do it again. Deuteronomy 5. And he's going to say again, do not make an idol for yourself in the shape of anything. But by the end of the book of Deuteronomy, he has to change that to a person who makes a carved image or a cast image. And you have to wonder if there wasn't someone out there who went, I didn't carve this cat. I cast it. Well, there was somebody. It was Aaron. He didn't carve it. He melted down all the... And so all of a sudden God goes, well, we've got to change our law a little bit to encompass this extra aspect. But it just goes to show the problem with idolatry has been so invasive in the life of God's people. We get don't murder. Really seem to struggle with idolatry. Yeah. And it's easy for us to look back at everything that's going on in the book of Habakkuk and all the evil that was going on in the world around, but that idolatry still remains very active. Even if we're honest, even in our own lives, we have the very real risk, if not already, having the struggle of trying to put away our idols and serve God. And the only other thing I'd say on the book of Habakkuk, just real quick, is I know we pointed out that we're talking about the Chaldeans here. Mm-hmm. And I think we are. I really do. But the question I have is, they seem very similar to verses 2 through 4 of chapter 1. The wicked people of Israel that he describes would also be described pretty well by a lot of these woes. They're doing the same thing. But the beginning of his prayer in chapter 3, at the very end of it, he doesn't say, you go get them, God. He says, don't forget to be merciful.
Yeah.
That just stands out to me that this prophet is saying, God, remember your mercy. If God has been telling them the whole time, I'm going to take the enemies out that are going to take you out. And I wonder if maybe that's just an indication that Habakkuk is recognized whatever he was going to do to the Chaldeans, he should do to us too. And so whenever his wrath comes on whoever it comes on,
Have mercy.
have mercy.
So I know the woes are directed to the Babylonians, but doesn't God have a double message? It's for his own people, as far as these woes as well. All right, what group of people are singled out for special mention in chapter 2, 18 through 20? And this goes back to Mickey's favorite answer. All those are singled out. Idol makers, teachers of falsehood, false teachers, makers of idols, which a lot of those are the same thing. What may be the proper context of Habakkuk 2:20? The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. What could be the context for this?
I struggled with that. That's what we put up on our board every Sunday morning.
Yep.
That scripture, but it doesn't seem to fit in this context to me. So help me.
We're not talking about the temple that Solomon built, are we? We're not even talking about the temple that the Israelites build after they get back. We're not talking about anything on earth, are we?
It's got to be somewhat in contrast to verse 19, right? The idol is silent before them, but in contrast, he's silent before him.
That's a good point. Well, this is what I have. Actually, this is not what I have. This is what W.J. Dean has. Someone read that? Jonathan, go.
Tracking of all this simply is that God has not abandoned his creation. He still sits upon the throne of universal authority and power. If the Almighty God and the indecent and immoral behavior of apostate powers constructed by rebellious and wicked men such as that of Babylon will rage from time to time, but only under the permissive will of him who is all and in all, above all, and those who trust in the true God and strive humbly to do his will may rest in the quiet assurance their reward with God is safe.
Very good. And this is actually very similar to David's Psalm 11:4. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord is on his heavenly throne. He observes everything on earth. His eye examines them. So we know that God is in heaven, but God is ever present. He's everywhere. So we should honor him always. The earth should be silent before him. So I think we're going to leave it there. I thought I could get through it tonight, but I appreciate your all's comments. That adds more than what I can give you guys, so I appreciate that. So like I said, Kyle's going to teach the class on Sunday, so he's going to give us a summary of what's going on between those 80 years between the pre- and post-exile. Thank you for your comments.